If you can share your video, it would be really great. All right, friends. Thank you, Alex. Okay.
Wonderful.
It's just more enjoyable. It's a more enjoyable conversation that way. Awesome.
All right, we just got 2 more minutes. 1 more minute.
Hello, Coach Lord. Are you starting a new career in education?
I had a career in education before I came to Houghton for 6 or 7 years. So.
All right, wonderful. Yeah, we did advertise this on social media, LinkedIn, the Houghton alumni. So we might get some alumni in here. We might get some other people, or maybe some practicing teachers who just feel like they haven't been on Zoom enough this week.
Right.
They just want to add to it just a little bit more. Great. All right, let's kick it off. Good evening, I'm Dan Noyes. Work here at Houghton in the advancement area, and it's my privilege to get things started tonight. Looking forward to hearing from a really neat group of educational leaders. I want to give you a heads up on what is happening the rest of the semester. We're doing all panel discussions for Best Talks this semester. And so it's an opportunity for you to hear from a number of people in some different fields. After tonight, our next Best Talk is the 23rd of February, and that's going to be a panel of young alumni in data science. So you get to hear all the different ways in which they are using their data science degrees. And frankly, it's pretty fascinating, even if you're not in that field, to hear what these folks are doing. On the 8th of March, we have a panel of young alumni who are doing accounting. We've got a couple in Big Four accounting, one doing international auditing. So if you know of students or alumni who are interested in the accounting field, that's going to be on the 8th. And on the 23rd of March, our last one is going to be health professionals. So we'll have particularly Houghton alums who have done our programs through LECOM, the Lake Erie College of Medicine, or through Dewville, where we have some accelerated programs. So you'll get to hear about their experiences in pre-dental, pre-med, and as well as pharmacy. So that's on the 23rd of March. But for tonight, a few housekeeping items. We want you to ask questions tonight. As they occur to you, you can submit questions in the chat, and you can either put them to Sunshine or you can put them to everyone. Since we are all a big family here, that would be fine as well. And please do that. So I think most of you know Dr. Sullivan, and Sunshine Sullivan is one of our, I think she's known for being a very student-centered professor and just goes all out to make sure her students have a great experience at Houghton. Here's some of her credentials here. She's an associate professor of education, chair of the education department, beloved undergraduate instructor.
You muted yourself, Dan. Or someone muted you.
Somewhat. Did I go on too long? I was introducing Sunshine.
Okay.
That should never have been muted. So I was talking about how you were central to developing the Master of Science in Education degree, which, if you know of school teachers who are looking for a master's degree, it's in emphasis in rural literacy. Isn't that correct, Sunshine?
We have an emphasis in rural literacy.
We have an, you see, I wanted to get that right. And what you probably don't know if you're one of her students is she's also the faculty development coordinator for Houghton. And so that's that higher level of making sure that her colleagues have what they need to succeed in their jobs. So I'm grateful. I know that she's been on Zoom quite a bit today with meetings and committees, and just grateful that she's willing to do this for students as well. So Sunshine, I'll turn it over to you, and you can tell folks who's here to serve on the panel.
Great, thank you so much, Dan. So the first question I have for our panelists, so we have 2 superintendents and 1 principal and they all are within driving distance from us. And they're not only alumni, they are incredible educational leaders in our backyard. So I haven't decided an order, so I thought, and maybe, is it okay if I call you Chad and Andy and Gail by first name? Okay. So you all can decide the order that you start, but the first question is, please introduce yourself and why you decided to pursue a career in education.
I'll go first. They'll tell you that's typically how meetings go. I'll go first just so I can get everything out there. So I am Gail Pavone. I graduated from Houghton in 2000, which seems a long time ago right now. And I truly got into education because I enjoyed working with students, and school was a struggle for me. And I was like, well, if I can get there, I can help kids that are struggling and really support them and have an understanding of where they're coming from as struggling learners. And I'll be totally honest, I never aspired to be a principal. I didn't think this is where I would be. I actually thought I'd still be in the classroom. But as I became a reading coach and did some curriculum coordinator work and was really more of an instructional coach, I found that I loved that piece of working with teachers. So I actually prefer to say I'm an instructional leader rather than a principal, because the principal connotation has the idea that you're handling discipline all the time. Whereas if I'm an instructional leader, I'm supporting the adults in my building to better meet the needs of students within my building. So I feel like that's my first priority as principal, is to support teachers to better support students, but then to also build personal connections with all the students in my building. So it's an ever evolving job, but I certainly love what I do, and know that I'm making a difference within my school community.
Andy.
All right, I'm Andy Dole, graduated from Houghton College in 1993 with a degree in elementary education and a concentration in physical education. I got into teaching really, I think, primarily because I was inspired by my parents. My father was a teacher, taught in Rochester, and I can remember as a kid going on home visits with my dad. I also remember my dad taking kids in Rochester out to Canandaigua, to Camp Ananda, doing plays with them and things like that. I was able to see the difference that he made in the lives of the kids that he worked with. My mom was also a teacher and was very involved in a preschool in Houghton College. I was able to see the difference that she was able to make in the lives of the kids that she worked with, as well as the families that she worked with. I started my teaching career also, like Gail, not thinking that I would become a principal, certainly never dreamed about becoming a superintendent. And I can remember vividly a conversation that I had with a colleague in the first school district that I taught in. It was a good friend of mine. His name was Joe DeCosmo. He was our physical education teacher. And he told me that he was getting into administration. And I remember saying to him, "Are you crazy? Why would you do that?" And he said, "Why wouldn't I?" And my father was a principal after he taught for many years. And I remember the long nights that my dad put in and all the headaches and things like that. And I said, it's a lot of issues that you deal with. You deal with the people who are angry. You deal with the parents who are angry. You deal with, the teachers who are angry. You deal with the kids who, misbehave. And he looked at me, and I'll never forget what he said. He said, "But those are the ones that need you the most." And that always stuck with me, because as a teacher, I always believed that every student that walked in my door mattered. And my goal was always to make a difference, a positive impact in their lives. And so that stuck with me. And when I moved to Canandaigua and taught in Canandaigua, New York, my superintendent came to me one day and said, "Have you ever thought about becoming an administrator?" And I said, "Nope, I'm not interested. I love the classroom. That's where I want to be." And he said, "Well, we think that you need to think about it, and we want you to be a representative of Canandaigua in a new program called the Wayne Finger Lakes Leadership Institute." And I really didn't want to do it. I kind of put him off, but he kept after me. And finally I said, fine, I'll take the first course. Took the first course, really enjoyed it. And then ended up being a principal in Seneca Falls, New York, elementary principal for 9 years, and then a high school principal in Seneca Falls for 3.5 years. And then was approached by somebody who said, "We've got this superintendency open in Bloomfield. We think you'd be a great candidate." And I said, "Well, I'm not really interested." And this colleague, pushed. And so I applied, checked it out, and ended up in Bloomfield, where I'm superintendent now.
I'm Ed Roth, 1992 graduate of Houghton. And my story begins in high school, where I had not only an educator, but a youth pastor who really, two guys that poured a lot into me as a kid from a single mom raising a kid. And at that point, my experience with them both was I really knew at some point, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I wanted to be able to work with kids in some fashion and be able to pour back into them the same way that these two gentlemen did for me. So I actually was a educational ministries major at Houghton, and really potentially thinking ministry. And kind of as I did my internship in ministry, I really did not feel the call of the Lord to actually go into full-time ministry. But those that know Dean Danner, former Dean of Students, introduced me to a program at Alfred University for school counseling, to be a guidance counselor. And I thought that would be a good avenue for me to pursue. So I did that. And when I finished, I was hired at the Jasper-Tewksburg School District, which is in Steuben County, small rural school district. Was guidance counselor there for 10 years. And kind of towards the end of that 10 years, I was approached, much like Andy, by administrative colleagues kind of tapping me to consider administration. And at first I kind of pushed back and said no as well. I, love being a guidance counselor and love that interaction with kids. But at a point, I just kind of, I guess, capitulated to get them off my back and started the program and really enjoyed it. Always thinking I would go into potentially like PPS work, maybe a director of guidance, that kind of thing. And one of my professors actually really pressed me when I took the superintendency course to really not push that particular job out of the way, and just said it's very fulfilling. You really have the most impact on the greatest number of kids. And that definitely appealed to me, but I thought, well, that may happen, a long time down the road. Well, once I was getting to the end of my program, I was asked to apply for the superintendency position at Jasper-Tewksburg. Did the interview process, was selected, served there for 10 years. Just a quick shout out to Hannah McCaffrey, one of my former students. And was there for 10 years, and then made a transition to the Canandaigua School District, which is literally in Houghton's backyard, and have been there since April of 2015. So I am just coming up on 16 years as a superintendent, which it blows my mind every time I think about it. But I love the work. I love being around kids. In my particular position, I am in one single building, PK through 12 in one building. So I see the full gamut of pre-K kids, playing at recess, and being able to interact with seniors who may be headed to military or college, and kind of talking to them about their plans, and really trying to figure out how I can pour back into them and provide that maybe some level of direction in their lives.
I would probably disagree with you, Chad, that you didn't feel the Lord's calling, because I'm sure all three of you could talk about how this work that you are doing is this vocational call. There's no you, sustaining what you do every day is, through the power and grace of our Lord, right? Um, but so maybe keep that in your mind as you start thinking about, or as you maybe integrate that a little bit as you share an important experience of yours in the field of education during this COVID-19 era. How has service influenced those experiences?
I think the
I'll
biggest
start.
thing is keeping it human, but Chad, I'll let you go.
I actually just had this conversation with my secretary this morning or this afternoon, who is also a believer, and just kind of was talking about a colleague that just seems so um, overly burdened by everything that's going on. And I just said, I'm not sure how other people deal with what's happening right now, not only just with COVID from a health perspective, but from a professional perspective, and obviously being in a classroom, being in a school building, and all the stuff that gets passed around and under normal circumstances with illness. And I had just said to her, I rely on my faith. There's a lot of times, and I'm sure Gail and Andy can echo this, of the stuff that we've had to deal with and the changes that SED throws at us, the governor throws at us, the counties throw at us. And it's just an ever changing, ever evolving situation. And I think having that understanding of who ultimately is in control, and, if I get COVID, I know the Lord's got me, and, he's going to protect me. And just being able to have that faith perspective, and trying to lead from a perspective of, again, everybody else is running around with their head cut off. You got to keep that sense of normalcy, and kind of being that rock of leadership.
I think maintaining the calm, because we could be coming into a chaotic situation on a daily basis. You never know who's going to be under quarantine or who's going to show up for 8 days and who's can't come 8 days and things like that. So I think it's maintaining the calm and making sure you are valuing everyone's perspective with it. I think we've had to let go of some of the grind of the educational setting that we sometimes have. And we've had to give up some meetings. We've had to give up things that we thought were critical to what we do in order to be able to better meet what humans need, to interact with each other and things like that, that I don't think we kept in the picture in planning and different things like that. So I think it's maintaining that calm, keeping it humanizing for everybody, because we are via Zoom with some people all the time. And so how do you keep that at a human level and still make it feel like an interaction? And it's just always bringing it back to that personal connection and relationship, which I think we've had to focus on more now than we ever have before.
Mhm.
And I would say the pandemic, I think, has helped me better recognize the power of connection with colleagues. I think the pandemic really has affirmed that nobody needs to know it all, nor can we ever expect to know it all to serve effectively. I've always believed that being humble is an important part of leadership. And this pandemic has certainly been a humbling experience. As Chad alluded to, trying to interpret executive orders, health guidance, those new regulations from SED. In my case, we negotiated or are in the process of negotiating 3 contracts. We're in the middle of a capital project, my first capital project as superintendent. So there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of times that I have felt personally kind of over my head. And it's at those moments taking that deep breath, giving your worries and anxieties, over to God, and then connecting with a colleague and asking for help. That's the best thing, you can do. With this pandemic, you've kind of had to be, as superintendent, a doctor, a lawyer, a labor relations specialist, a counselor, a mediator, instructional leader, technology specialist, and everything and anything else in between. And you just can't do all those things without connecting with colleagues and without reaching out for help. I also think the pandemic has reinforced the power of relationships and the power of community. One of the things that we did back last February, when things started to look like they may get bad, I contacted our village mayor, our town supervisors, members of different service organizations and the faith community within our community. And we started to meet and we started to talk about the fact that, this pandemic was going to have an impact, not only on our school district, but on our community. And so we began to work together to figure out how we can best support our students, our parents, and our entire community. So the school kind of became the hub of that effort. We became the website where the latest information was posted. We became that source of information about what was going on in the community. And we still meet. We're still meeting almost a year later every week, and we talk about what's happening, and we share difficulties, we share challenges, and we also share those successes that we've had. And those relationships, I think, are really important.
Yeah. A question that came in while you were talking about this was, it'd be interesting to hear how you're promoting students' mental health during the pandemic.
So I have a pre-K to 3 building. Talk about dream job, working with the littlest of the littles and really helping them figure out the education world. I have a building of 450 kids, and I would say for us, the most critical piece is the social emotional. And how do you manage that when only half the kids are coming to the building? So this year, after our lessons learned from March through June, we instituted a homeroom huddle that occurs every morning. So all kids are part of a homeroom huddle, and that is really just a chance for the teacher to see everyone that's in their homeroom, whether they're an A student, a B student, or a remote learner. And that has been a game changer for us. It's really just been about the relationship. There's no academics really done during the homeroom huddle. It's really just a chance to touch base, get that visual of, are you doing okay? And all of that. It's also, because of how everything is set up, homerooms are really tight this year. There's only 9 students in every classroom because of spacing, and those 9 kids are in that same classroom the whole day. We're not going to specials or anything like that at this point, just because of keeping everything tight with the numbers in our area being on the rise. And so the 9 kids and their teacher, their relationship is critical. And we know that that's critical to building. They're eating breakfast in their classroom, they're eating lunch in their classroom. And so the relationship piece is just huge and really impacts the social emotional. We've also made sure to provide a lot of supports. We have a Prospect Elementary Facebook page that we keep a lot of things on there. I haven't been really good about the past 2 weeks doing announcements, but we've been doing our daily announcements on there to keep everyone connected. And our social workers and school counselor have a page where they read social emotional stories to kids and things like that to support that are very much age appropriate. So it's very interesting with preschool. Many of them haven't been in the school building, so they don't even know how to act for school. To try to get them to act like school on Zoom is like really entertaining, but it's pretty amazing to see what they are able to do. To watch 4-year-olds mute and unmute themselves without thinking twice about it is like, whoa. But that they're able to laugh and interact and have fun and do show and tell and things like that that's really built that social emotional and made sure that they're still having that connection. And temperature checks have a bonus. It makes sure I see every single kid as they're coming in the door, because it's kind of hard not to acknowledge them as you're making sure their head is showing green on the screen, but it just builds that other personal connection and being able to make jokes about, about it and not be overwhelmed and frustrated by have to walk by a thermometer. Is really just creating that environment in the building that, hey, it's something we do. It's nothing different. And, I actually probably think I have it easier than middle school and high school because they aren't fighting it. They're just like, all right, we have to wear a mask. Okay, you told me to wear a mask. I'm wearing a mask. But those connections are just key, whether it's via Zoom or as they're walking in the building.
Yeah, I would agree. Those connections and those relationships with kids are critical, and the social emotional piece is absolutely a priority for us. As superintendent, it's not just students, though; it's also teachers. And this pandemic has had a devastating impact on everyone. I mean, we have kids who are coming to us, who are food insecure, and so figuring out ways to make sure that kids have food and that families have food. I've dealt with over the past month 2 different faculty members that have lost loved ones as a result of COVID, and being able to support them and come alongside them is critical. We have our counselors who push into classrooms, and they do teach pieces and social emotional lessons with kids. We'll do some breathing exercises. We push out yoga to faculty and staff. We have a wellness committee that does a terrific job of engaging faculty and staff in activities that are safe and socially distanced, but connect one another. And again, that connection and that support is really important. And it's the most important thing that we do right now. In fact, it's so important that at the elementary level, we have said to teachers, your main focus is social emotional, and second is ELA and math, because those are skill dependent. So you think about social studies, 3rd grade social studies, a student wouldn't need to necessarily pass 3rd grade social studies or even have 3rd grade social studies and need to be successful in 4th grade social studies. But they would need that 3rd grade math, and they would need that 3rd grade ELA foundation in order to be successful in 4th grade. So those 2 content areas are a focus in elementary school, but the social emotional is the focus for us.
Well, and I would add, you can talk about social studies like around, you can center your literacy around the social studies and inquiry around science concepts, integration of those things, helping them see why the math and literacy matters in other contexts. So yeah, that's awesome. Sorry, Chad.
One of the nice things about our very small school district, we are one of the few schools in the region that actually have PK through 12 kids coming 5 days a week. And it's been wonderful. That was our major push as of the summer, as we started to put our reopening plan together to make sure we could have kids back 5 days a week because of that social emotional piece. And because obviously kids learn better when they're in front of their teacher. And I think that's made a big difference for our kids. they don't necessarily deal with that, difficulty of having a Zoom relationship with their teacher, or as Gail said, the label on their forehead, I'm an A day kid or a B day kid, and I only see half my friends, and those kind of things. So for us, it's been paramount to have our kids in the building, and our school psychologist has done a wonderful job, getting into classrooms and trying to help and monitor, do activities with the kids for that SEL piece as well.
So again, connected with the COVID-19. So what are some new discoveries and instructional technologies your teachers have learned to leverage in their everyday work?
Whether they like it or not, Zoom. We've all become Zoom experts and how to manage a waiting room and breakout rooms and things like that. I think our biggest conversations have been around that the strategies that you would use in your classroom, you could use via Zoom. So we use Kagan strategies a lot and things like that. And there's no reason why you can't still use those within a Zoom platform. And also how to create short videos that are meaningful so that they're getting a lot of content with not a lot of fluff around it. Kids aren't going to watch a 30-minute video. So how can you get a math lesson in a short amount of time and still keep them engaged? It's stories. We're doing a lot of reading stories out loud to kids so that they're still getting that literacy piece all the time. But how do you keep them in the questioning mode while you aren't necessarily sitting on a carpet with them reading, so that they're still thinking about what they're reading. So I think it's pushed us in those ways, but it's also made it very real that the instructional strategies that are solid across all platforms. It doesn't matter where you're teaching, it's good teaching. And I think sometimes it's easy to forget that, but good teaching strategies will continue no matter where you're teaching from. As long as you're doing it solidly and consistently. And we have a great platform. We're blessed with class pages. I would say I was hesitant with something like that, but it's given us a place where all families can go to the same location to get their students' materials and Zoom links and any resource that they need. So they're not trying to go to one website for one thing and a different website for another thing. It's just making sure everything's there and a solid plan so that everyone kind of knows where to go and it's not hidden, or they don't feel like they're missing something that's a piece of the puzzle, or it's right there in front of everybody and easily accessible. And it's also made sure that our grade level teams are staying all on the same page, because I have 6 sections of each grade level. So having a platform like that, they're all working along the same kind of topics and content so that we make sure everyone's getting the same thing, though differentiation is going to be a huge thing next year.
I think one of the biggest benefits, if you can call it a benefit, we've tried to struggle in encouraging some of our high school teachers to utilize, whether it's Blackboard or Google Classroom, utilize those platforms to get students ready, our older, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade students ready for the college environment, where having had a couple kids, now go through college or be in college, pretty much you're doing a lot of stuff, handing things in online, posting things. And we weren't really doing a good job with that from a high school perspective. And I think it was for, all the good reasons of, that face-to-face instruction and handing things in and all that. But if one benefit for our high school kids has been, I think now they're genuinely ready to step into a college classroom and know that, oh yeah, I've got to go to Google Classroom or Blackboard or whatever, and I've got to pull an assignment off, I've got to hand something in. So that's been a plus for us. Is it great in the elementary? No. I've tried to say to my folks, it's not going to be the same. That's okay. Do your best. And don't sweat the small stuff, and don't get too stressed out about it either.
Yeah, similar to Chad, I think what we've been using, what we are using has been around for a while. The difference is, again, the pandemic has kind of forced us to make use of it, and in some cases to make better use of it. So we are a school district that uses Google, so teachers, even those that were hesitant prior to the pandemic, became very familiar with the Google Classroom, Google Docs, etc. We're using that much more efficiently and effectively than we've ever used that in the past. Obviously, Zoom, things like Flipgrid, Loom, things like that are things that our teachers are using. This year, we're also installing in our capital project some technology that will allow us to synchronously connect with our local community college so that we can offer courses in real time to our students in school.
Nice. So you've started to touch on some of these things. What lessons have we learned as educators that we must remember and act on in the field of education, if we can say that there's going to be a post-COVID-19 world, right? Well, what do you want to make sure, if we go back to normal, what do you want to make sure we take forward into that world?
I think for me, I don't know if it's necessarily a new learning, but I think it's highlighted the importance of providing equitable opportunities for kids. The disparity that exists, I think, in our current system is something that we need to address moving forward, and ensuring that all students have access to the internet and to resources in an equitable manner is part of that. Looking at the makeup of advanced classes, of lower level classes or courses, I think is an important reflection, because the population of those advanced courses isn't diverse. Then we need to look at what's happening, what's occurring, that's creating that. I also think we've learned, again, how to better leverage technology. I think about parent conferences, meetings, professional development work now, and I don't think we can ever fully go back to the traditional way that we've done things. I think utilizing technology as an option for parent conferences removes some barriers that have prevented interaction between the school and home in the past. And I think that's a positive. Some of those barriers are transportation. As a building principal, I can remember parents showing up for parent conferences, in a taxi, and being able to utilize technology to allow parents to better connect with us as a school system, I think is going to be a plus moving forward.
And I think some are also intimidated to sit. I mean, if you go to a CSE meeting, you're sitting with 10 professionals using educational jargon, and some parents just either don't like it or are intimidated by that. And I think, as Andy said, to be able to sit in this kind of atmosphere where, you're sitting in your own comfortable space, and I mean, you're still hearing the same types of things, but it may, create that avenue of opening that door.
What's interesting is I actually had a teacher say to me probably 2 weeks ago, I never thought I'd say I miss a meeting, but now I see why we met the way we did and why we had the discussions we did about kids. So I think the experience is creating educators that are longing for some things that we had value on, but didn't realize how much value we had on. So it was the dreaded RTI meeting. Now everyone is ready to be part of an RTI meeting because they're missing that component of being able to talk about kids and how they're doing and how can we help those kids. I think we always talked about relationships being critical and important, but now we see in real life that they are so critical, and how can we keep developing that? I know for my building, one of the keys to having kids back in the building was how can we still make sure we have a focus on play when they can't necessarily play with manipulatives together and things like that. So keeping the focus on they're still kids, and how can we still focus on priorities, but still keep them kids at the same time. Sometimes you feel like you're on a train and you're just keeping on going. And I think this gives us it's okay to stop and take the time to be kids and to learn through play and different things like that, if that makes sense. But I think it's going to be a new appreciation for some of the structures that we didn't appreciate, and also look at some of those structures differently so we target priorities better.
Yeah. Thank you. The tying some of these things that you have all kind of alluded to as far as equitable access to some things that Andy came out and said it pretty bluntly, but even in Gail's comments here, we're noticing, okay, our teachers are starting to realize at a deeper level the importance of community and collaboration, and the diverse collaboration. So the next question I had was, what challenges have you discovered in your work for equitable teaching and assessment practices in your context?
How do you test a student remotely? We have some of our population that is purely remotely, that we have yet to see face-to-face by parent choice, and that's okay. We're respecting that choice. But how do you know that you're getting an accurate read of what that child truly can do, or what their parent truly can support them in doing? So I think that's one of our struggles, especially as we did report cards. And thank goodness we're a standard-based report card. Otherwise, it'd be even more complex, because how do you give an 89 when it may have been a parent that did it with them? But those struggles with that are difficult. And the struggle of some of the students we've not seen much of at all. And how do you support that when we come back into the post-COVID world to meet their needs with the gaps created? I think we are lucky we've been able to give hotspots to most, but we still have some that live in areas that don't have internet. Talk about inequity right there, because they can't even access everything that we're trying to put out to them. And that's such a huge inequity for many of our families. There's households with 4 or 5 kids. You can't have all 5 kids on Zoom at the same time. It doesn't work. And so how do you overcome some of the inequities when we're all back in person to kind of meet those needs? I'm very thankful to be in a district that continues to have the conversations around equity and how to best meet, the needs of our population. We have 68% that are economically disadvantaged, and then 38% of our population is Native American. So making sure between both dynamics that we're meeting the needs of the diverse community that we have at the same time, and support cultural differences and all of that along the way.
I think Gail did a great job summarizing those challenges. Again, it comes down to opportunity and access, right? So, those students who have opportunities to travel, who have opportunities to experience different things, who have access to books, print, technology, and the like, have advantages over those students that don't. She talked about those families that have multiple kids, or those families that do have a parent that's there to support a student, with the technology needs, the logging on, the troubleshooting, those types of things. And then there are other students that don't have that. I think one of the other things that's always been a consideration is, how do we address different learning modalities? Being sure our instruction and assessment I think is done in various modalities to meet all types of learners, I think is also an important challenge that we need to figure out.
I think one of the biggest inequities is we have a lot of parents that were never taught how to parent. And now we're having them try to parent to the max, which is hard because they never had a role model on how to keep structure and routine, and they're having to do that more. And so I think some of that creates an even bigger inequality because we have kids in an environment that they don't know structure and routine, and they don't know practices, not at their own fault, but just because of how they were brought up also. And so for them, the priority of getting them on Zoom for a lesson isn't as big a deal because the value in their household growing up wasn't around education and all of that. So how do you get that going when you're not in person? I think creates great inequality there.
And you ask those same parents to also be teachers alongside that they're not trained to be a teacher too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so we're all seeing this. So I'm going off script here, sorry. Well, what can we do? What kinds of partnerships can we develop to work against these inequities, right? Houghton has a huge alumni group that are of educators. What could we do? How could we think constructively of trying to make some changes? Have you thought about, like, if only we had, like, what would you know, any ideas?
I try not to sound pessimistic. Some of those parents have to want to come to the table too.
Mhm.
And so it's how can you get them to come to the table so that they feel valued and part of the process with it. And we've tried home visits, we've tried all sorts of different kinds of interactions, but it's hard to get that investment in. And so I think it's continuously trying to change it up to see, can we meet the family need to then better support the student need? Because it's a small population, but it's, I think, the population I'm at least most concerned about just because we aren't seeing them.
I think being in the middle of a pandemic is a huge challenge for some of that. So, I talked about, those students who may not have the ability to travel, or those students who may not have the same experiences that other kids have. As a school district, we can provide some of those experiences for kids. We've partnered with different organizations within our community. We have a antique wireless museum, so we've partnered with them, and our kids are able to go to that wireless museum and take different workshops and things like that, either as students or with their families. We've partnered with our historical society. We try to create these real world experiences for kids so that they're able to make connections between what they're learning and outside. We've launched an initiative where our 5th grade students travel to our local community college just to get on campus and to have that experience. So I think, again, any school district that's near Houghton College offering that experience to elementary kids. We think about high school kids getting on a college campus, but you put an elementary student, a 5th grade student on a college campus, their eyes just light up. They can't believe the size of the gym. They can't believe the size of the cafeteria. It's just an exciting environment for that. And helping them to kind of visualize that and experience that, I think, is a huge help. So those partnerships, I think, with different organizations, one of the things that we had prepared to launch this summer was a kind of a welcome picnic with new families. So any new family who moves into the school district, the plan was to have a picnic, to have the Rotary Club, the Lions Club, the historical society, et cetera, there, so that, those new people to the community were able to build relationships and connections to those organizations, and know where they could go for support if needed. So it's those kinds of things, but it's awfully difficult to do in the midst of a pandemic because you got to socially distance, and it's just much more difficult to make that all happen. I think you're muted.
Thank you. My next to last question is, what recommendations do you have for our pre-service educators as they prepare to enter the field of education? There are lots of them here. What do you want to tell them?
I think one of the things that Andy touched on, and we had a regional superintendent meeting today on Zoom, and one of the things that we were reflecting on is all of our meetings since last March have been via Zoom, and Andy can probably echo this. Superintendency can be a lonely job at times, and there aren't too many people other than other superintendents that really understand what the job is about. So that's been a kind of a heartfelt angst of ours, that we're getting together on Zoom, but we're not really together to interact and just continue to cultivate those colleague relationships and friendships. So one of the pieces that I would say, and as you get into a education realm and get into a job, make sure you're reaching out to other colleagues. If for my school district, I happen to have one section of elementary. I have one first grade teacher. She does not have a colleague of another first grade teacher to talk about first grade. However, they do a lot of up and down conversations as far as curriculum, as far as how kids are doing, making sure when you get into a position, you just don't go in the room and close your door and feel like, I need to be Superman or Superwoman and, tackle these kids by myself. Make sure you're reaching out, and, because it's a tough job. There's a lot of stuff that happens. There's a lot of things that are thrown at you, and reaching out to colleagues. And again, it doesn't have to necessarily be in your same grade level or even your content area, but just somebody that understands the work and that you can lean on and have that dialogue back and forth.
Yeah, that developing that community of practice, that network, and recognizing that once you have it, it's not done, that you continue to expand or deepen it in one way or the other. That's really good. But I do want to go on record that Chad didn't mean that you should actually tackle your students. So don't do that. All right.
Then that may be a
Sorry.
I think for me, what I would say is, as you enter the field of education and as you have a classroom of your own, remember every student, every child that walks through your door has a story. Invest time in learning that story and respect and honor that story. And also remember that as a teacher, third grade teacher, fourth grade teacher, physical education teacher, whatever it may be, you're a chapter in that child's story. And that's awfully powerful to think about and to reflect on. You're writing a chapter of that child's story, and that's powerful. And I think along with that, I always say to our leadership team, remember everything that you do, everything you don't do, everything you say, everything you don't say, how you spend your time, where you spend your time, who you spend your time with, all of it sends a message. And you need to really make sure that you're careful about the messages that you're sending, because those messages matter. Are you spending time with, just those top students? How does that time with those top students look? How does that time with those students that are struggling look? What are the words that you use with those students that struggle? All those things matter, and all those things send a message, and that message is important. And then finally, I would just say, relationships are the foundation of the work that we do. You probably figured out that that's a theme here tonight. Relationships are critical.
Well, all of the juniors have heard that over and over and over. So that it's good to hear it from, practicing professionals in the field.
So I have a few things I would say, and they've actually been a lot of the conversations with teachers this year that are veteran teachers too. Find something to call your own beyond your classroom. Have a hobby, have something that you do that is important to you, that you can go and do, because it can't just be about your classroom and it can't just be about teaching. So for me, it's running. I run all over the place. I get miles in whenever I can. It's part of what I do to make sure I'm taking care of me, because if I can take care of me, I can better take care of those around me. So I'm not saying you all need to go running, but you need to find something that you can call your own and that you can really invest time in, because then you'll better be able to invest time in others. Remember, your ideal may not be your reality. And I think for the three of us talking, our reality changed drastically and our ideal changed drastically within the past year. So we've had to let go of living what would be our ideal life, our ideal classroom, our ideal school, to what is reality and what is critical to that reality. And I have that conversation around teachers because all teachers put a lot of the pressure on themselves to be perfect. And that's an ideal, but it may not be reality. So you're always going to strive to do your best, but you can't put so much pressure on yourself that then you're not able to enjoy your passion of teaching. And my last one would be to always remember you're a learner too. So no matter where you're going, you're continuously learning along the way. And it doesn't end when you get your degree or your master's degree or your certification. It's a continuous process all along. And that's how we get better at what we do, is by continuing to learn.
Thank you.
Piece I'll throw in, and Andy kind of touched on this a little bit, as far as every student comes with a story. We've done some trauma-informed work in our region. And one of the things that's always stuck with me is the concept that, again, you get a group of 20 kids in a classroom, and there's times where you kind of look at a kid, and Gail kind of, referred to some of the parenting that may or may not be going on at home. And as educators, we look at, sometimes we look at kids and say, what happened to this kid? Or what's wrong with this kid? Let me switch those. Not what's wrong with this kid, but asking the question, what happened? Some of our kids and a lot of, and it doesn't have to just be rural communities or inner city. Sometimes suburban kids have a lot of trauma that's thrust on them, and trying to figure out what happened, and not, just prejudging or, assuming what's going on, or just a kid's naughty because, he has bad parents or something. So again, as Andy said, every child comes with a story. Try to get to understand what that story is.
I like that. Yeah, and that totally connects with Gail saying you're always learning, right? It's every day you need to be learning about your students. Yeah, that's great. I tell them that if the moment they think they know everything is the moment they should resign from teaching, because they're not actually engaged in the work that they should be doing. So yeah. Okay, one final question. What continues to inspire you as a leader in today's field of education?
Seeing my kids every day and knowing that what I'm doing is really for them to have a better future and to be able to be the best them, and just helping them along the way with that. So I think just knowing that truly that is the reason why we do what we do.
Yeah, I would echo that. For me, it's just, I get a kick out of walking into school every day and seeing kids. And again, I have the wonderful life of seeing, 4-year-olds to 17, 18-year-olds, and being in that same building, seeing kids progress through the grade levels and learn and mature and grow up. And also just, again, from a faith perspective, I try to be a servant leader, trying to make sure my teachers have what they need, kids have what they need, and, not just always, I guess, you'll find superintendents do different things and do their job differently. I'm sure Andy can, reflect on that as well. And, but just trying to be sure that I'm setting that tone of being a servant leader from a faith perspective, and trying to portray that.
Mm.
I definitely think students as well, the talents that they possess, the compassion that they often show for one another, the perseverance, that they show. Some of the kids that I've been most happy for to see walk across the stage have been, some of those kids that just have that background story that you learn about, or that you begin to understand, and to see that student, given the background that they have and the obstacles and the difficulties and challenges that they've overcome, walk across that stage, that is, it gives you chills. It's inspiring. I think for me too, colleagues, again, so fortunate to be in the Wayne Finger Lakes BOCES with a group of superintendents who just are smart, they're dedicated, they are passionate about making a difference in the lives of kids. And on those difficult days, to be able to pick up the phone and connect with a colleague in that region, or to pick up the phone and send Chad a text, or give them a call, that's inspiring, because that there are other people out there that are making a difference in their communities, and it kind of spurs you on to do the same in your community. And then I think, to Gail's point, another thing that inspires me is nature. Just, the sense of calm and grounding that it provides, the sense of perspective that it provides, and the wonder that it instills, to be able to walk outside and, see the stars, and to know that, we have a God that created those stars, and that we're fortunate enough to be a part of that. We're here to make an impact. That's inspiring.
Yeah. Thank you. So I'd like to offer time for any of our attendees. If you have any questions, you can just unmute your mic and ask it, or you can put it in the chat. I'm really good at wait time. All of the panelists are good with wait time too, so. Actually, Dan, what time do these usually end? I just realized what time it was.
Yeah, it did fly by. I think we're probably getting towards the end here. But I think this was fantastic. So I want to thank you for doing something else at the end of your day. And it's great to have somebody who's an expert in this field talk to other experts and draw out the answers that you got from these folks. And yeah, I'm grateful hearing from these. As just a citizen of this area, it's just great. I feel like our kids are in good hands after listening to these folks. It gives me a little bit more optimism about what's happening in the world right now, to know that there's people like this that you all are in charge of our kids, and supporting teachers and supporting students. It's really inspiring.
Well, and I just have to say, every time I meet with any of the panelists, I leave incredibly like an energized bunny, like, okay, now here's my running,
Mhm.
my tasks to do. I mean, I just had a meeting last week and someone else messaged me like, I'm feeling bad for all of the things that just got added to your already long list of things. And you're like, it's okay. Here's what I've already done,
Mhm.
like, because to what Andy, what all of you have said, like that network, that professional community of practice, you have different, you cross lots of landscapes of practice, because you can't just talk to superintendents. You also have to talk to all kinds of other people to inform your work, right? And so the partnership that all of you offer, Houghton College as a whole, but especially with the education department, it's treasured, and I greatly appreciate the time you put into the evening and preparing your remarks, and just sharing our space with us. So thank you.
Yes.
One of the things I wanted to say to the students is just make sure that you utilize the context that you have. There are at least 4 superintendents in this region that represent both Andy and I, the current superintendent at Letchworth and the current superintendent at Keywood Rushford. So you have a very unique circumstance of having superintendent leaders in the very direct region around you. Sunshine has our contact information. I think I speak for my colleagues and actually classmates to say, please reach out if you ever have questions, even if it's, you're getting ready for an interview, you want a little insight, please reach out to us. We would be more than willing to sit with you, kind of walk through it, what to do, what not to do, those kind of things. And again, from a faith perspective, just know, not only can you get some advice, you can also have somebody pray for you.
Thank you. There are a couple more questions. Do you have time for that? Or should we wrap up? I had one private one and one to the public. Dan, what do you think? You're muted.
It's not Dan's decision. He can't talk. So.
Right. Yeah. If you can read lips, you knew what I said. Yeah. Let's go with one more question and then we will wrap things up, because I know some of these guys got to get their sleep so they can face another day.
Yeah. So I'm going to go with the one that came in first. What was the most significant aspect of your Houghton preparation? Like, what prepared you for the work that you're doing? What did Houghton do to support you in that work?
I just have to say, as my wife is standing to my right watching me, I'm not sure why. Meeting my wife at Houghton was probably the most significant thing.
Good answer. I would echo that. Not meeting Chad's wife, but meeting my wife.
Oh, mercy.
Again, it goes back to relationships. For me, if you are not aware, Andy and I did play soccer together. So that long-standing relationships that we built, now our girls have played together for the college and some club stuff, but not classmates and teammates, but just the classmates that I have. Obviously, Dan was a year behind me. And just having those real strong relationships to reach out. I still definitely consider Coach Lord as a friend and a colleague, and we've had multiple conversations when I've been on campus, and just truly appreciate that long-standing relationship that it never wanes. If I get back on campus, there's somebody there. Dan and I may talk, Coach Webb and I may talk. So that piece of building relationships, I think, was a huge foundation.
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, the inspiration, I think that the people that I had the privilege and honor to interact with, I think about, as Chad mentioned, as a soccer player, Coach Burke, and what a huge influence he was on my life, to see the integrity and the faith with which he conducted his life with, helped me kind of have that role model to model after. I think of Dan Woolsey and Edna Howard, and just people who were just amazing educators and had a passion for making a difference in the lives of kids through the work that they did with students to prepare them for the field of education. And I also remember I remember at one point as an education major, we were gathered together in the chapel just as education majors, and someone gave a speech, and I can't remember who it was, but I do remember the verse that they referenced about, if you cause one of these little ones to stumble. And I just remember thinking about that and recognizing what a calling, and you use the term calling, what a calling this is, and it is a calling, and it's important. And so I think that piece of it, for me was huge moving forward, because I still think about, that talk and that verse. And I think about my role in the lives of kids. So.
Great.
I think it was the start of building a confident base for who I am as an educator. It helped me start to develop my philosophy and my passion for reading and help kids read, because that's truly in a pre-K 3 building what it's all about. So it really helped to create that base and create that passion for really educating kids the best way possible. And I think there might be some missionary kids on board here. Being a missionary kid coming to America, you can still be successful within an American setting if you have the right base and the right vision and motivation behind it. So I think Houghton was a safe place for me to kind of find myself within being in the States for the first time as an 18-year-old, and then to be able to develop that into becoming a public educator. And to know that you can come from a setting like Houghton and have great impact within a public education setting at the same time. You can't limit yourself to your opportunities out there because of your educational background.
Great. Well, thank you again for your time this evening. Dan?
Yeah, thanks to all of you. And, join us on March 8th if you want to meet some of our young alumni from the data science field. I think it's fascinating. I am not a mathematical person at all, but it's amazing for me to see what our students are doing and how they're using data science to make a difference in the world. But thanks again to our educational leaders tonight. Thank you, Sunshine, and for all you students for being here. And I hope the questions don't have to end here. You heard Chad say you have access to these and other alumni, and so we encourage you to reach out and make these connections, especially during times like this, but throughout your careers with other Houghton alums who are where you would like to be. So thanks to all, and have a good evening.
Be well.
Thanks for the invitation.
Yes.
Rachel, message me. Okay.